Anyone over the age of 16 has a high chance of knowing what this is and its basic context. Loss. It's easily the most infamous page in webcomic history, and it's one of the longest running memes on the internet. To this day, it's still a classic and the biggest thing the comic is known for, and for most people, this is all they care to know, but I'm not most people in this regard. Once I found the origin of this comic over 5 years ago, I read parts of it and watched the animated show tens of times with friends ironically. Then in 2022, I began reading the entire thing and cataloging the entire story, since I wanted to make a video dissecting the whole story since nobody has done so yet. I finished that in 2024, and now, since I have the right channel for it, this script in 2026. It's taken part of junior high school, all of high school, and 2 years of college for me to finally do this, but why plus overview. CAD's always been special to me since it's one of my biggest inspirations writing wise despite its quality, and it's what got me into reviewing things in the first place. While I think CAD has tons and tons of issues, I think that overall it's been extremely overhated for the last 24 years of its existence, as it's had many videos mocking the comic's quality or the creator himself due to his own wild antics at the time. But for those of you who are lost, what is CAD? Tim Buckley's Ctrl+Alt+Del is a classic and infamous gaming webcomic that originally spanned from October 23rd, 2002 to November 25th, 2012, which is where the original continuity ended and it transformed into a fully random comedy comic. Later, on October 29th, 2014, it was rebooted as Analog and D-Pad, which is ongoing to this day and actually very good. CAD itself jumped from being a totally random gaming humor comic to a specific semi-episodic group-focused comic, with the main characters being Ethan, Lucas, Lila, and Zeke. For this story summary and critique, I'll be focusing specifically on the parts with these characters and totally disregard the interspliced random humor bits since they're not canon to the events of the story. If you don't know the context behind its Lost arc, it's basically an arc where the main character Lila, who's Ethan's wife, has a miscarriage, and in the comic it was taken very seriously. This event in the story had a fine build-up and initial execution up to the page itself, and most fans of CAD were used to serious moments in the comic. But from an outside perspective, which was most people then and is now, it felt completely random, wild, and unfitting due to its reputation as a wacky gamer comic. And so, that's why the memes mocking this event blew up so hard, because we also have to acknowledge that CAD back before the Lost Arc days was massive. I mean, it didn't just get an animated show for no reason. With all this important stuff out of the way, I need to say that this video will be different from my others since I'm breaking it up into two parts, pre-loss and post-loss. I'll summarize the arcs and then give my thoughts afterwards if it feels necessary, and do note that this is also a complete rewrite from an already finished script from 2 years ago. So let's get into it. Pre-story. When CAD started, it was mostly just random jokes and intros to characters that'll be important later. We learn that Ethan used to have alcohol problems and a previous girlfriend before Lila, and we meet Scott and Ted, who are Ethan's rivals since they like Linux and he likes Xbox. Winter Eamus, which was referenced in Smiling Friends, which was super funny when me and my friends saw it, dude. We pointed at the screen and literally laughed. We literally pointed at the screen and laughed. It was so funny.
I was actually just about to go home and celebrate Winter Eamus,
which is the in-universe holiday for gamers starting every January, took on its form in 2004, and aside from these things, and Ethan meeting Lila and somehow convincing her to become his girlfriend, we already learned that Ethan's an alcoholic, violent sociopath. Early characterization was seriously rough, man. Criticism: art-wise, this is the weakest CAD ever is at. Tim Buckley becomes a great artist later, but not yet. The flaws that make Ethan both annoying to watch and actually interesting are here in a rough form. He's unlikable, but he takes some losses, unlike mid-story Ethan, who basically wins all the time, or post-loss Ethan, where he actually feels more like a real person. Lucas, who's Ethan's best friend, basically just exists as an audience stand-in. He's the straightest straight man thinkable, while Scott's the best because he comes in and is funny a lot of the time by inconveniencing Ethan. Nobody's good yet, and humor-wise, we aren't even at hit or miss level. It's just not funny, but like everything else, as time progresses, this aspect improves a ton. Zeke's creation. This is the first notable arc of the comic. Zeke, the second most important character in the comic, was created by Ethan out of loneliness since his friends were all busy. He's made out of an Xbox and his existence confuses and disturbs everyone except for Scott, who doesn't mind him and kinda likes him. This will be funny in part 2, I swear. We also learn about Ethan's EverQuest addiction from high school, though this is basically just a silly bit or callback throughout the series. Nothing serious. General thoughts. My criticism 2 years ago about this was that Ethan's shown to be an alcoholic idiot, so it doesn't make much sense for him to know how to make Zeke. Plus, it'd make more sense for Scott to have created something like Zeke since he's shown to be smart and secretive. But nowadays, I don't mind this, because CAD currently is a very unserious comedy, and Ethan consistently does things like this randomly throughout the story as he's shown to be a good inventor. About Zeke, I think that Lucas and Scott's first reaction to him were funny, although wordy. But I don't get Ethan's unnecessary cruelty towards Zeke. Dude, you made him to be your friend because you were lonely. Why would you say he's not your friend? I can see this maybe being intended as a start for Ethan's growth as a character, since Tim, for the most part, clearly planned everything out, but it's still strange. 2004's Winter Eatmas. This is the first year where Winter Eatmas actually becomes a thing, since Ethan wants a holiday for gamers, and it becomes one despite everyone in Ethan's personal circle finding it stupid. It's whatever. Misc Arcs 1. I said this about this page. Ethan is established as a narcissist on January 28th, 2022 because he gifted Lila a chocolate statue of himself for Valentine's. Lucas gets fired from his job and Zeke says that he wants a name so he can be more human, and that's where his name Zeke comes from, since Ethan names him that. This really massive part of Zeke's character arc is done so much better later on and in his reboot analog and D-pad. And like Ethan's currently rough characterization, it feels like Tim just had a general idea of what he wanted to do and not the whole thing yet. Anyway, Zeke goes out and tries to be more human, and he comes back after going to a strip club and being beat up by hoodlums, which is where his hatred from humanity stemmed from. Yes, if you remember the old animated meme video of Zeke choking Lila, that was indirectly caused by him getting beat up at a strip club. That's freaking stupid. Most of early CAD has solid characterization for everyone except Lila. Lucas throughout the whole story gets more grounded subplots about his crazy love life. Ethan gets wild and funny adventures with his crazy inventions. And later on with Zeke, we get to see his mindset on humanity evolve and his emotional and mental state shift. Lila is left out though. Lila's ex arc. Christian, who's Lila's rich ex, tries to win her back despite him cheating on her. Ethan's jealous because his girlfriend's ex is hyper rich, so after they argue, he punches him in the face and breaks his hand doing so. Then he tells Lila he loves her, which makes her a little uncomfortable, but later she comes back and they kiss or whatever. Lila apologizes to Ethan for no reason, which will be an issue later. Criticisms. Christian's just a stereotypical jerky rich guy, and because of his traits, it makes me wonder about what's so special about Lila. He wanted to get back with her to fly her out to Jamaica for some reason. Since he's characterized to be a jerk, wouldn't it have made more sense for him to basically get with anyone else except her for shallow reasons? Logically, we shouldn't have even seen this guy. I'm not too annoyed or anything by this, but so far, this is the dumbest arc. It felt like Tim wanted to make a very clear next step in the relationship of Ethan and Lila instead of just doing it slowly, which is something he does better later, but like everything else, it's not good so far. Misc Arcs 2 and Ashley arc. A small arc happens where Ethan wants to fight Ted because he thinks Ted destroyed his computer, and he hits the penguin with a hammer. Ooh, it's Ted, by the way. By the way, he had no proof that he actually did this. Anyway, Ethan also actually has a job at a place called Game Haven, and he spends his whole paycheck on video games, which is the most Ethan thing ever. This causes some issues because Lucas says they need to pay the electric bill, so another jerk move from Ethan really. Also, there's a collaborative page that references another comic called Apple Geeks 3.0, but I've never read it. After all of this, Lucas meets his first in-story girlfriend Ashley after she accidentally ran him over. Lucas previously gave up on dating for a bit since his last girlfriend moved away, but he gives it a chance. Though Ethan tells him that she'll break his heart and that she's another Julia, which by the way is his last girlfriend. This is obviously a horrible thing to say to your best friend since high school, but Ethan ends up being right about this woman he's never seen, and she starts getting really possessive and stalkerish, so Lucas breaks it off with her and gets a restraining order. Criticism. Elephant in the room, what the hell is up with Ethan saying that and then it actually happening, even though there is no red flags or foreshadowing? I'd be fine with this if there was a red flag or two, but it's as if Ethan willed into existence a demon to possess Ashley and turn her into a jerk. It's a great example of this comic's early bad writing because this makes zero sense, and honestly, the arc's too fast paced. Even if there was a red flag with how fast his arc went by, it wouldn't have felt like a natural escalation without her starting off that way. Also, Ethan saying something like that is a total lose-lose. Him being right still makes him weird, but if he was wrong, him saying, I have a sixth sense and it says that she's trouble would have just made him even more of a weirdo. Time Machine arc. Ethan makes a time machine that can freeze time so that he can prevent any new games from coming out before he's already played the ones that he has. This bit here about Zeke asking if he's adopted is actually kind of funny, by the way. Anyway, the time machine blows up and Zeke goes downstairs, which is where Lucas and Scott decide not to move, so he thinks that it actually worked, since Ethan told them that he was going to do this. The next time Ethan sees them, they pretend as if they're from the future, and he realizes that they're screwing with him. Then future Ethan comes from the future to give Ethan a warning about an impending threat to the world, though Ethan doesn't believe him since he was messed with earlier and he shuts the time machine off. General thoughts. First, real praise, because the bits where Lucas and Scott play that prank on Ethan are actually kind of funny, and this gives a good setup for the ending of CAD. So clearly you are meant to forget about it until you read the end of the story. Then you say, oh wait, that actually was important. This is why I say it's clear that Tim was planning the entire story before making it, and in quite a few ways throughout the story for either events or amazing jokes, his choice of how he wrote CAD's serialized elements worked well. Now the art's actually better. It's like a mix between the iconic but infamous Lost era and the 2002 style. And while I personally prefer this over the mid-story art, I wouldn't call it great yet due to its stilted nature and heavy reuse of assets. The comic was made almost daily at this point, so it makes sense why Tim would use the infamous method of reusing eyes and mouths or poses to save time. But because of this, it comes off as bland. And yeah, this is where the original VU's face like meme came from, if you guys remember that from back in the day. It's time saving at the cost of art quality, though really it never relied on its art or visuals to tell jokes. CAD's boring to a lot of people because it uses very wordy, dry, witty humor with long setups and simple punchlines most of the time. I personally enjoy this style of humor, especially in pages like No Snow Angel or Morning Rush, but a ton of these jokes are super hit or miss because too many words are oftentimes used. Notice how in No Snow Angel and Morning Rush, there are only words at the end and that's why it works. Or I guess I could say the words are just the punchline and what happens previously is the setup. I think that if Tim simply worked slower, maybe making a page every 4 to 5 days, the comic would have generally been funnier because he would have had more time to think of funny jokes or good continuation for what's happening next when he's clearly just winging it like for his Winter Eames plots or random small arcs that don't mean much. Overall though, by this point, CAD is no longer an unfunny comic, but instead it just has too many words. I'm not reading all of that is a totally fair feeling to have because truly, tons of these jokes have too many words and the art certainly isn't helping to tell the jokes because it's just serviceable enough to get what's going on so the jokes make sense, kind of like South Park or Family Guy. 2005's Winter Eames, plus Valentine's Fool. Now Winter Eames is a worldwide holiday, but some guy falsely claims that he made Winter Eames. Ethan fights this guy and it ends with this guy saying, Winter Eames will be mine! It's not very notable, it just kinda happened, but one thing I thought was important to note was 2005's Valentine's Day. Here's what I said on 6/4/2024. He made it seem like he forgot Valentine's Day when he really didn't, and he does these sort of things all the time. All this implies is that Ethan is pretending to be a dumbass 99% of the time, or the writing is bad since this is a consistent thing. I'm leaning towards the latter. After this, end of quote by the way, after this, Zeke asks Ethan for a girlfriend, which actually sets up for the creation of Emma later and builds upon Zeke's character more, which was nicely done by the author. But more importantly, Ethan's characterization and actions in the story so far make him really confusing because of how contradictory his actions are. The guy planned out fooling Lila, he didn't just do this on a whim. He has the patience and skill to create sentient life from an Xbox, a single Xbox, and a time machine, while also being a psychotic idiot that only cares about video games. This is why it feels like he's just intentionally acting stupid for no reason, out of laziness, or just to mess with the people around him. Weirdly enough too, he can act like a totally regular person a lot of the time, which is a middle ground he can actively choose, but he just doesn't oftentimes. I don't hate Ethan because sometimes it's pretty funny, but when it's not, it reminds me that this guy is most likely acting in this way intentionally for no good reason. Emma arc, part 1 out of 2. Lucas and Ethan go to a TV store because Ethan broke their TV, which was actually pretty funny. And Ethan maxes out a $5,000 credit card in 15 minutes, which is great. Lucas gets a girlfriend from the TV store though, and Ethan tells him that he got an employee there fired, which happens to be that exact girl. So Ethan and her meet and she obviously dislikes Ethan and she tries to get him fired from Game Haven via false essay claims, which is crazy. And it fails because Ethan's Ethan and there's no world where he'd actually do that. Lucas and Ethan talk about Emma, who's Lucas's new girlfriend, because Ethan doesn't like her. And for those wondering why Zeke in the animated series air humps a TV for the intro, this is what that's referencing. Emma and Lucas hang out some more and she makes fun of all of his hobbies, which bothers him, and she makes him partake in some very dangerous activities like skydiving, and afterwards she talks about how great her skydiving buddy was, which Lucas sees as a massive red flag. Criticisms plus praise. Ethan doesn't like her, so like with Ashley, she of course had to be a bad person. though it was implemented a lot better. Unlike with Ashley, Emma turning out to be toxic with quite a few red flags before Ethan makes his dislike of her clear made her turning out to be a bad partner more natural. And the approach for this is a lot slower, so it doesn't feel like Ashley did, with how she just switched up on a dime and became crazy. Emma always was blunt and clearly a bad person in the first place, with her saying falsely that Ethan grabbed her ass in an attempt to get him fired from Game Haven, to her being so straightforward with Lucas while she was at her job, to also her making fun of his hobbies. Hot Day Arc. During the Emma arc, this bigger plot concerning a hot day takes place. It's of course super hot, so to cool off, Ethan throws a water balloon at Lila while inside, and she dodges it, which causes him to accidentally hit Zeke. Zeke malfunctions and Lila's distraught because she actually hasn't seen Zeke yet, and they argue about it, with Ethan saying that Zeke now is his friend, and now Ethan's trying to find a way to fix him. Zeke though falls on a battery or something and comes back to life as a violent, dangerous killing machine. Someone power skill this guy because he can throw fridges through walls. Bro might be town level. Can he beat the Deep? Zeke actually damages the house a ton and causes a gas leak, and everyone tries to stop him, but it just results in Zeke breaking Lucas's leg. Scott realizes that Zeke's gone haywire, and he brings Lucas with him and Ted outside so they're safe. But the house blows up due to the gas leak, and left inside are Lila, Zeke, and Ethan in a now burning house. Zeke attempts to kill Lila like he does in the future, but Ethan stops him and debris hits Zeke's head, which sets him back to normal. Debris also falls on Zeke's body, which crushes him, so Ethan takes his head and they all escape out of the burning building. Praise and criticism. So of course the idea of a robot turning evil is very overdone, even for the time. But it remaining sorta realistic and grounded as Zeke did crazy stuff like throw fridges through walls or him breaking Lucas's leg, while funny jokes like the Splinter one happened, overall made this arc the best and funniest out of what we've experienced so far. Well, it's also very straightforward. Ethan here caring for Zeke and calling him his friend is, I suppose, character development, and though it's questionable and overall CAD has some really terrible character and arc moments, I didn't mind it because of this arc's other good aspects. An issue I had 2 years ago with this arc is that certain jokes felt unfitting, but I don't feel that way anymore. In fact, it going from holy crap, Zeke just tried to kill Ethan, to Ethan complaining about getting a splinter is actually really funny. Moving arc and thoughts. Our main characters are living in a hotel for a while because they're searching for a house to live in, and they find a 2-bedroom one. Ethan asks about Scott and where he is, and well, he's just kinda gone right now for some reason. They don't take that house, and Ethan goes a little crazy because of Zeke being dead, but eventually they find a place and Scott just arrives out of nowhere to live with them. By the way, the CAD show takes place here, and we can tell because Scott's door is the same here as it is in the animated web series. But the web series is of a different continuity because the TV Zeke humped in the CAD web series intro is the same one as in their house that just burnt down, so they actually lost the TV, they don't have it still. Funny that we can tell that the web series is an alternate universe because of Zeke air humping the TV. Overall, this is a short arc, but it works well to get us back into the normally light tone of CAD. Of course, there's a few hit or miss jokes, but it is an interesting period and it's easy to forget that these guys didn't always live here. Emma arc 2 out of 2. After they move in, Lucas keeps talking to Emma and she says that she's jealous she wasn't in his position about the burning house stuff, which is wild, and they go do more extreme sports. Ethan fixes up Zeke with multiple Xboxes, weird because Zeke was only made out of one, and Lucas invites his girlfriend over again for dinner. Lila meets her and tells Lucas that she's either cheating or hiding something, and she can just sense it. Randomly, as Ethan's giving Zeke a new body, he tells Lucas that she's gonna kill him. Totally not bad foreshadowing, by the way. Here are the things that happen before Emma attempts to murder Lucas. Zeke gets rebuilt with a remote to stop him in case he goes haywire, and naturally Lucas doesn't like that Zeke is back because of what happened. Ethan drops a package off at Scott's door while showing interest in what might be inside, which will be important later. Emma basically forces Lucas to go rock climbing without any safety equipment, and Lucas obviously doesn't do this, and by this point he's paranoid that maybe Ethan's right, so when Emma gives him a drink he assumes it's poison. Emma's done playing now, so she decides to take out a gun, and she invites her actual boyfriend over, and she said she was gonna kill him for his uncle's inheritance money, though they got the wrong guy. They decided they're gonna kill them anyway, so Emma and her boyfriend tie Ethan and Lucas up, but Zeke comes in and saves them, which leads Emma and her boyfriend to being sent to jail. Criticism. I liked how this arc was shaping up since it felt like a regular relationship between two incompatible people, but instead we get an absurd and out of place twist where Emma ends up being some evil criminal with a mastermind plan of killing Lucas for money since they thought that he got his uncle's inheritance but they got the wrong guy. This is ridiculous for many reasons, and let's break down why. So we're gonna ignore that they dated for months, and in that time, she and her boyfriend could have double checked to see if they had the right guy. First off, them meeting in a television shop that she works at is already insane odds. Why not randomly meet up in public or something? And if they really wanted to kill him, they could have done so while skydiving by sabotaging his equipment. Factoring in the fact that she dated him for months, and this makes even less sense. There would have been a million other opportunities to kill Lucas if this was the case. I mean, why even try to wipe him out at his house? Why not yours? The ending comes out of nowhere, and at most, there are just implications that Emma was cheating on Lucas because of how she was acting around her skydiving partner. And honestly, if Ethan never said, "I think she's gonna kill you," then there'd be no way to see this bizarre and unearned twist coming, because this was just shaping up to be a regular toxic relationship. Overall, the arc at the start was good, but the ending is bad. In my opinion, while it's not as bad as the Ashley arc, it's probably one of the worst CAD arcs easily. Zeke repairs and small stuff. Zeke actually got his hand shot off during the scuffle he had with Emma and her boyfriend, so Ethan has to repair his hand. Lila learns about what happened, so she appreciates Zeke for saving everyone. Ethan screws up when repairing Zeke's arm since he made it out of a 360, so he just decided to make him on the same level as a 360. Thoughts at the time: 6/5/2024 at 2 AM. The strangest but most consistent thing about Zeke is his belief in robot superiority, and here a robot world of some kind. The story has stated multiple times and shown that he's an anomaly and there is no robot world or anything like that, but he's stuck on this sort of idea. It could be possible that Ethan programmed him to have the delusion of other robots existing and robot rules and commonalities, but that's never been stated. Many theories can be crafted from CAD, as the story told, especially now, is becoming way more linear and some things just aren't explained. I want to sleep now though, more CAD research tomorrow. I think I probably thought a bit too deeply here since this was written at 2 AM, and in all reality it was probably just a way for Tim to tell funny jokes. But this is one of the only real explanations for why Zeke continues to reference the robot world lightly throughout the story. And this speaks to how much I like Zeke as a character. He's my favorite because of his internal conflict, as he wants to be a human. He's jealous of what his friends have since he's just a sentient Xbox robot, and only by the final page of the story is he respected as an equal by humanity. So every time he asks for things like a girlfriend or a name or anything else humans have, it's clearly an attempt to be like them, even though he never will be, and he at the same time resents humanity. Zeke's the best written character in CAD, as things like this help us understand how sad Zeke is, even before any real Zeke-centric arc. He's fully alone in the world, humans fear him because they don't know about him, and he feels like getting what they have or feeling what they feel, so he just has to keep saying that he's superior, and he has to keep talking about his fake robot world in order to cope. By this point, he's already pretty layered and interesting in a way that the animated series just couldn't replicate. 2006's Winter Miss and small stuff. Ethan dons the legendary Winter Miss crown, but Lila gets kidnapped by Jack Thompson. If you don't know who that is, then he was a guy who was staunchly against video games back while CAD was being created, since he believed they caused violence and were generally negative to people's lives. And Tim Buckley at the time really didn't like him since, of course, he's a gamer. Nonetheless, Ethan saves her, and I don't have many other thoughts about this one. By 2006's Valentine, Ethan and Lila get married, and the legendarily terrible CAD show came out in this same month and year, so let's talk about it. The show. Originally, you had to pay a monthly fee to watch each episode of the series until it was uploaded to YouTube in 2009, all for free. The show, which I've established is a non-canon alternate universe thanks to the Zeke humping clip, is significantly worse than the comic for many reasons. Tim's style of writing doesn't really work here, as it's clear that he's used to just making jokes for his 4-panel comic pages with a clearly defined point where the punchline's supposed to land. In this medium, there's not a clear point where the punchline should end or a joke should start, and now you have to worry about comedic timing, sound effects, and animation, which is a completely different world when it comes to making something funny. There's also nothing about CAD that would make anyone think this would be better animated because of his style of humor and art. It's overall pretty grounded, the main characters are basically normal people, and the jokes are again very dry. This kind of thing works completely fine for a comic, but the animated version wanted to try and up things a bit, which just doesn't work. CAD as a comic is semi-serialized and episodic at times, since it has arcs like the Hot Day one that I spoke on earlier, or single pages that don't have any continuations like No Snow Angel, meaning that it actually has a lot of variation in how it could be engaging to readers. Transferring potentially single-page jokes or entire arcs like the Emma one into an animated format with episodes that are generally less than 10 minutes, less than even 5 minutes, hurts part of what makes CAD even enjoyable to people who find it funny. The fact that it can be episodic and have engaging arcs that build and progress the characters. And man, the jokes feel terrible. It's like the very start of the comic all over again. As you can tell, there's a lot going against the show potentially being good, and the show is definitely part of why CAD to this day has such a bad reputation, even though these arcs that I've recently been talking about really haven't been that bad. If the show instead adapted things like maybe a few Winter Emus events, the Hot Day arc, or was like the VG Cat animated episodes, where it was basically animated versions of simple episodic pages, then it probably would have been way better. Or if Tim just had an assistant writer. Arcless period. Ethan raids Bethesda to play Oblivion early, which was sorta funny. Lucas got addicted to Fight Night and he parries Ethan's hello, and Ethan says, "Geez man, get a grip, it's only a video game," which is actually very funny, especially coming from the guy who just raided Bethesda to play a game early. Lucas is bothered by his experiences with his exes, understandably so, and Lila tells him to try dating again, but he declines. No clue why they're wearing each other's clothes here, but whatever. Ethan talks about being traumatized in his childhood because he couldn't play video games, and I'd say, "Geez man, get a grip, it's only video games." A wild thing I noted here was Zeke's comment about how the Gadget channel is like porn for robots. I at the time said 6/5/2024. How does Zeke jerk off? Does he have a built-in penis? Bro, what? I would literally never make this joke nowadays, and I especially don't want to think about it either. This will be really funny later on, so here. Zeke follows Scott and Ted up on the roof as they build a satellite, but when Zeke says that he can't wait to tell Ethan and Lucas about it, Scott and Ted look at each other with a worried expression and he gets pushed off. I missed this initially, and it's a cool detail because this becomes way more important later on. Plus, it shows that Tim really did plan out every single important detail of CAD, like I've been saying like 3 times. Anyway, Zeke falls and you can see in this panel, which is hilarious. And because of that, Lucas gets startled by the thud and cuts himself really badly. Since he was cutting tomatoes with his bare hands for some reason, like he has a tomato in his hand. Why was he doing that? He's sent to the hospital and he meets who seemingly be his 3rd girlfriend. But after he gets her number, he thinks of his past girlfriend or girlfriends and what Ethan said, and he throws it away. Thoughts of the time, 6/6/2024. I like CAD's story for the fact that it tells a few, through mostly Lucas and Zeke, more serious stuff for Lucas and Zeke, and more goofy, less important subplots for Ethan. It's not god tier like Berserk level, but it's alright. 2 out of 5. It's cool that Lucas is changing as a person due to what Ethan said, and its insane past relationships, which neither of their resolutions were good, but still. Man, I really overrated Berserk here. Lila's only notable arc. Ethan can't go to E3, but Lila got an invitation to go to the National Professional Gamers Association. If she won, she'd get $20,000. Ethan gets jealous because he can't go, but he really wants to go. And he keeps trying to, even though he wasn't invited, so eventually Lila brings him despite the fact that he'd have to go with a partner, which he doesn't have. Ethan does all sorts of stupid and annoying things until Lila tells him to go away. The tournament starts and Lila does amazingly by channeling her frustration from Ethan into the game, causing her to wipe out all of her enemies easily. Eventually she plays another round, but she's not annoyed enough to wipe, so she calls him and Ethan accidentally hangs up on her and she gets mad again, so she wins. Again. By the end, Lila wins 3rd place and gets 10k instead of 20k, but she's happy with that amount anyway. Criticism. We meandered around with the E3 thing first, with Ethan being like, "Oh man, I can't wait to go to E3. And then we get this arc where Lila plays video games or whatever for money, and Ethan's just continually annoying. And I want to remind you that Ethan's pretending to be this dumb. This guy's shown to be extremely intelligent, and he can have regular human feelings. We've seen him function like a normal adult through conversations, so this makes this arc feel even weirder. And it makes me wonder, why are Ethan and Lila even together? Most of the time we see these two, Lila's annoyed by Ethan and Ethan's just occasionally making nice gestures for her. They don't really have any chemistry and they just connect like how you'd expect the stereotypical couple would. If I could give a comparison to how it feels, it's kind of like Moxie and Millie's relationship in Hell of a Boss. It's just not that interesting and they're just lovey-dovey. But in CAD, Lila's annoyed with Ethan most of the time, or Ethan is doing something that inconveniences her. Lila is also one of the least deep characters in the story, and the common criticism of her just being the main character's girlfriend is totally right. Even if I use all the knowledge and thoughts I've accumulated over 5 years about this story, I'd still barely have anything to tell you about Lila personality wise, even though I can easily describe everyone else. Ethan's a genius that took Law 21 to heart, Zeke masks his jealousy of humans with hating humans, and Lucas is a relatable gamer with a regular job who's just trying to make it in the world relationship wise. Lila though is just a girl who likes video games and Ethan's wife. Warhammer mini arc. This is one of my and my friend's favorite pages for years. And this mini arc was really funny overall. Ethan, what is this now? What is this that you're doing? Lucas, it's Warhammer 40k. Ethan, 40k what? 40k ways to never meet a girl? How is it that you always find the nerdiest games to play? Not many thoughts on it, it's just fun. Ethan's jealousy arc. After the Warhammer mini arc, we learned that at this point, Lila apparently had a job which she quit since she could make money from playing video games professionally now. Because of this, Ethan gets jealous of Lila and mad at her, and she's pissed about this, so she plays video games with Zeke a lot and vents a lot. And because of this, I made a little prediction for how this whole arc will end. 6-7! Yeah, 6-7. In like a month, that's not gonna be. Even now, it's not funny. I'm sorry. 2024. She'll say sorry for how she treated Ethan despite her feelings being justified. Let's see if that happens. Anyway, things get bad since Lila won't even sleep in the same bed as Ethan anymore, so she goes to Lucas for advice. He says that Ethan probably isn't jealous and that he's probably just sad that he get less turns on the video games, since Ethan is allegedly simple-minded. Definitely cap. Lila, because of what Lucas said, now believes that she overreacted, and she wonders if she was a jerk in the situation when she didn't do anything wrong and reacted completely understandably given the fact that her husband wants her to go back to something worse that she has no reason to go back to. Ethan also talks to Scott, and when he lays out the situation, he realizes that he sucked too, and the two of them talk it out, say sorry, and the arc ends. Criticism. Terrible arc. It was very pointless since nothing changed, and it wasn't even that funny. All we got to watch was some mundane conflict for a few pages, and that's it. And we got to see a highlight of a negative part of Ethan's character that barely ever comes into play, his jealousy. He had no reason to be mad at his gamer girl wife for being able to play video games for money. And this overall is just Ethan's fault. Lila was rightfully annoyed at him, and she had no reason to say sorry to Ethan because he's the one that started this whole thing for no good reason. And again, it brings us back to the question of why are these two together? I've already spoken on the fact that most of the time Ethan's just inconveniencing Lila, but this is yet another show of that, and honestly this time it feels sort of controlling because Ethan couldn't help himself for being jealous of his wife due to a weak ego. 2007's Winter Emus. Ethan decided to make a high-tech Winter Emus gaming chair with features like a diaper. How horrible. And also he makes this one where it like slaps you so you wake up. He does this so that he can commit to playing video games for a week straight, and he also makes a bulletproof glass box that'll seal him inside so he can't leave. As he's gaming, he's basically transported into another dimension within his mind where he's in like an old video game, but before he knows it, the week is up and he can leave his chair. After his visions, he requests a pencil and paper so he can start the gaming religion. This is stupid. So some of the jokes here are actually funny, like the one where Lucas gets hit with the automatic wake up device, or the one where Ethan gets Zeke to build his chair, but geez, there are just too many words in this arc. I usually don't mind it, but even this is a bit much to me. Kate arc beginnings. Ethan and Lila are getting ready to get married again since their last one was actually secret, and this makes Lucas realize, hey, I kind of want to start another relationship, because his friends are getting married, so he does. And when he tries online dating, he takes a break because of how unattractive a girl was that he saw. Zeke sees this though and he says, to mischief or not to mischief? Zeke, please keep being you, man. Zeke told this girl to meet up at Lucas's workplace, and Lucas obviously isn't interested, but his boss tells him to take the night off early, which leads to this really funny exchange between him and her with his internal thoughts. Super brutal, but it's one of my favorite pages. He walks her home and surprise, she's not fat, she was faking it. She's actually attractive because she was wearing a fat suit. This is retarded for many reasons, but I'll save it for later. Presumably, the day afterwards, Lucas wears Kevlar armor since he's paranoid for good reason, which leads to a funny exchange between Lucas and Lila. And on the date, Kate notices it, but he tells her that he's an FBI agent. And that makes things really awkward, ruining the date, though a few days later he tells her that that was untrue. Praise plus criticism. I like that Lucas's past relationships have an impact on how he dates now, even though I dislike how those two previous arcs went. It actually makes Lucas more relatable and makes him feel more like a regular guy, because someone going through the crazy things that he went through, of course, wouldn't forget them. By now, the arcs reached that recognizable classic Lost era style completely. Most people hate it, but I kinda like it. Maybe I've gone crazy after working on this video for almost half a decade, but it's very befitting of a story that, up to this point, has been generally pretty grounded. So the dry and simple style fits its style of comedy and its low energy nature. And honestly, during this arc has been some of the funniest CAD so far. It's a good start to the longest main, then subplot of all of CAD. Anyway, I don't have that many criticisms, but they are big. First, no way any woman would just wear a fat suit online to see if someone can like them for them. I don't know, I'm not a woman, maybe they do that. I don't know, dude. That's extremely weird. And you probably just would get really down bad people, which I bet are worse than normal people. Also, I feel like there's a little missed potential with Lucas maybe developing as a person. What if she actually was just unattractive and Lucas liked her personality wise and had to grow to overcome that? That could add a layer of complexity and it'd be a unique relationship conflict, as so far Lucas's relationships end in the woman being completely insane but still attractive by CAD standards. With this, it'd be on Lucas himself instead. Lucas is an aura farming based realist though, since as he said, looks are important, but nobody can say that out loud without sounding like an asshole. Nobody actually ever operates like that, since we're all human, so I'm not mad or anything that we didn't go in this potentially interesting direction. Aside from the fat suit thing, which is ridiculous, this is a great beginning to one of CAD's best serious arcs, Gamer Gloves arc. Ethan loses too much to Zeke in video games and gets mad, so he makes some robotic power gloves. With them, he destroys Zeke's hands so he can't ever beat him in video games again, but when he attempts to take them off, he can't. He tries to live life normally by wearing long sleeve shirts, but none of this goes well, and when he tries to play video games, he's so powerful that he accidentally breaks his controller. This is the final straw, so he gets Lucas to cut off the robotic arms, and then he replaces Zeke's arms, and things go back to normal. The arc was very simple and entertaining, super lighthearted and fun, and it was just a great refresher, honestly. Tim's style of humor works well when he takes outlandish ideas like this and just execute them in realistic ways. It's just great. This is just a good arc. If you read any old CAD, read this Gamer Gloves arc. It's actually funny. Gaming religion. Some stuff happens and eventually, this stuff is not important, that's why I called it stuff, and eventually Ethan decides that he has to create a gaming religion. He makes a religious book with some info that parodies the Bible, and once he's done, a Christian, a Jew, a Muslim are like, oh no, and they decide they have to stop him. Also, Zeke knowing more about religion than Ethan is really funny. Why would he even care about learning this info? Anyway, it gets in the weird territory of Lucas saying basically, okay, prove that his God's fake. And then the religious guys have like no clue on how to respond to that, so they just walk away. It's stupid. Criticism. A miscarriage happens in this comic centered around video games, and that, within the story's context, makes far more sense than a completely random r/atheist subreddit level diss on every world religion out of nowhere, instead of it maybe just being like a simple parody of the Bible or whatever. Of course, as a Christian, I would find a random diss on basically every big religion that comes out of left field and is highly ignorant annoying, but even before I was a Christian, I thought it was a bit weird. Here's what I said on 24, I had to do it, okay. I wouldn't classify CAD as just a goofy, wacky gamer comic, just one where video games are a major consistent theme for jokes and references. And I think that those two things are different because a large majority of CAD has nothing to do with video games, unlike other gaming webcomics like VG Cats and Penny Arcade. And CAD does try to tell serious and fun stories through small subplots, through the wacky life of Ethan, Zeke, and Lucas, but I don't know where this anti-religious humor came from. Really, it feels kind of out of left field. It would have been funnier, honestly, if this got as far as Winter Eamus, like a church was built for video games and everything's in Ethan's name, and maybe to end the subplot, everyone realizes that this is dumb and they leave instead of a political commentary. Not a fan of the arc, and before I was religious, I wasn't either. It's just not well executed dark humor. Kate arc and Lucas's realization. Ethan got a pet scorpion and it stings Kate, which understandably makes everyone annoyed. They lose the scorpion and Kate's sent to the hospital, though as Lucas is sitting by her, he realizes that he doesn't love her. He said he realizes this now out of all times, and Lucas decides to talk to Ethan about it. He tells him that he also never told her how he doesn't love her, and that he can't see himself in a long-term relationship with her, but he wants to give it time and a chance to see if things between them can grow. He decides not to tell her this yet, and he instead just goes out with her more casually, even though she and him have a different set of goals for their relationship. Praise plus clarifications. From here on, the major perspective on CAD being an old, corny comic for gamers that most people have is totally inaccurate. I'd give that title to VG Cat instead, since that one's full of gaming references and no stories. CAD, when you focus on the canon bits, like this massive summary is doing, feels more like a story with video games as an element as opposed to it just being a gaming comic. It's not as good as his later work like Analog and D-Pad, a story that hones in on the narrative factor a lot more than this one, where sometimes it's random and goofy, but it's clear that even earlier on, Tim knew what kind of story he wanted to end up making, with his later works like Again Analog and D-Pad inspiring my writing style when it comes to serious stories then and to this day. This dynamic between Kate and Lucas gives us something to sink our teeth into, since Lucas finally has a good girlfriend, but he doesn't love her, and he won't bring that fact up. It actually showcases one of his hardest to notice but consistent flaws, that being his inability to be fully honest. Lucas feels like a really simple character, and so does everyone because they have big, obvious functions and traits within the story, with him being the relatable audience stand-in or straight man. But Lucas hates serious conversations, which is the reason for many past and future issues. The twist is interesting because of this very flaw that he's actually consistently had throughout the story, with it only now being relevant. If he was just transparent initially right now with his girlfriend, here instead of later, then a lot more time and hurt could have been saved, but that's just not how he is. Again, Tim's seen as a horrible writer because a lot of CAD's earlier parts are really rough, even though it gets a lot better, and right now, we're getting a small glimpse into how good and layered the story actually can be if it's your thing, even though it's still for the most part an outdated, hit or miss gaming webcomic comedy, and honestly, I'd still say that it's pretty mid currently. Random and important stuff. Anyway, back to the stupid stuff. Ethan tries to get an early copy of Mass Effect under Lucas's identity and he succeeds, which then gives us one of the most memorable panels of CAD, assuming you read it. Ethan, drop whatever you're doing, it's time to get our Mass Effect on. Zeke, awesome, hit me. Remember, Ethan assigned Zeke. Why would he put the disc reader there? Turns out that Lucas wanted to work at BioWare, but because of Ethan's stunt, he screwed over his chance. We cut to Kate talking to Lucas about some stuff and he interrupts her when she says that she loves him. Later, Lucas finally decides to tell Kate that he doesn't love her and how he feels about the relationship, so he goes over to her place to do so and he tells her. I know I just talked about how he didn't, but this actually did happen like a little while after the previous events. 2008's Winter Emus. Gaming religion's one that people actually follow, and he meets the gaming gods to see what Winter Emus actually is and whatever, who cares. Fuck this Winter Emus. Sorry for the cursing. Flip this Winter Emus. Prelude to Loss. It's probably been like half an hour now or something, maybe more. Anyway, Ethan has to invite people to his and Lila's wedding, and Lila reviews that she's pregnant. They talk about it seriously, and they feel as if they're not ready for a kid yet, but they decide to keep it. And we know how this will play out. Lucas meets Kate's parents, which is awkward but funny. Ethan and Lucas play Warhammer again. Ethan makes an Iron Man suit, which caused me to have a total aneurysm while taking notes for some reason. I don't know why. On 6/7/24 at 10 p.m. I typed, what I don't understand, I'm gonna read this like how it's typed. What I don't understand is the premise of this joke, which is, oh, Ethan wanted to do crazy Iron Man cosplay, but he underestimated how heavy it would be. And if it was a regular comic where Ethan was just like a regular idiot, it'd be funny. But we have Zeke standing right there, a robot he built back in 2003. 2003, 2003, 2003, 2003! This means that he at least has the same engineering and technological skills as he did back then, and this is 08, i.e. 5 years later. Why was I tweaking? Anyway, Ethan gets a tiny controller for his baby, and this is the final arc we'll talk about for this first part of the video. Loss arc. Ethan speaking to a customer and cashing his stuff out, and suddenly right after this, we get the classic 18-year-old meme, loss. After Lila's miscarriage, everyone's in low spirits, including Lucas, since he didn't support the decision to have the kid, and Ethan's hurt the most. Ethan, I can't really think about it right now, you know? I have to focus on Lila. I'm not sure this was ever actually real for me. It was just a concept, an idea that would be real in 9 months. But for Lila, I'm not even thirsty, man. I just came out here because I needed to. It's breaking my heart to watch her hurt like this. Ethan doesn't even know what he should be doing, and he can't even grapple with this pain that he's feeling. The idea of having a kid he could have had memories with, a reality that was right in front of him and fully possible in his mind minutes ago, was just ripped away from him unjustly for no reason. For Ethan, we see someone who clearly needs time to process this traumatic event, and afterwards Lucas asks Ethan if he wants to play video games, but instead he talks about how he feels and tries to lighten the load on his shoulders by venting. Ethan, I know she doesn't blame me, but in a weird sense, I almost feel like it would be easier if it was my fault, if she had someone to blame, someone to be angry at, instead of it just being this thing that was out of our control. He snaps at Zeke for something that happened off screen, and he doesn't forgive him for whatever he said. And Lila finally comes home to greet Ethan after the miscarriage. A day passes and still Ethan hasn't forgiven Zeke, and Zeke apologizes with Ethan, replying with a quirky quip. Okay. Ethan goes upstairs to talk to Lila about their wedding, and there's another joke. Then Ethan tells people he invited to his wedding that it's postponed due to the marriage. Then Ethan decides to pineapple goggles. Note 6724. He's back to normal when he was talking to Lucas. He's back to normal. How is he back to normal? A few days ago, his future baby freaking died. Things are basically back to normal as Ethan's working at Game Haven when Christian, that rich guy from earlier, appears since he wanted vengeance on Ethan. This is so retarded. So he's planning to buy Game Haven so he can embarrass Ethan. I think, if I can remember this correctly, he was going to change all the outfits like pink or something so fucking stupid. Ethan gets a new friend, and then Christian shows up at their house so he can talk to Lila as friends. Lucas gives advice to Lila about having difficult conversations, which is ironic, but I'll save it for later, whatever. Ethan's new friend makes a weird move on him, and we learn that Christian actually placed her in Game Haven to make it look like Ethan was cheating, so Christian can get back with Lila. What the hell is even going on in this story right now? Lila believes this and is about to go with Christian, but Ethan travels to the airport and catches Lila. After they have a conversation which is way too text dense, Lila says sorry for thinking that Ethan was cheating, and also sorry for being distant and thinking Ethan would ever cheat on her. They fly out to Italy, get married. This time I think it is actually secret, and then Ethan's side of this arc is over. Mishandled. This arc started off strong with a fittingly sad tone and slow pacing, which is what you'd expect given the subject matter. We even see how Zeke responds to it, and he doesn't take it as seriously as it should be taken, clearly, because he said something that offended Ethan a lot and we never see it, which is a stronger move than showing us what Zeke could have said. It honestly feels like real people going through something bad. And hey, we have to talk about the big part of the Lost arc. CAD, as you know, has had serious moments, but it never got this serious, though I don't think conceptually it's a bad idea. It actually makes sense because this sort of thing was a massive shock to every character involved, so why shouldn't it be to us? But the thing about it is that the story gets over this extremely serious subject matter way too quickly. Zeke says another joke or two, which makes sense since he's Zeke and he doesn't get the seriousness of the situation. But there's so many out of place jokes before it quickly snaps back to the regular lighter tone with this stupid pineapple goggles bit that, by the way, isn't even funny. And the thing about this is that it was in an awkward place to begin with. Potentially, it could have been great to have the story slow down as Ethan and Lila get over what just happened, but at the end of the day, CAD is still supposed to be a comedy. I'm not saying it should have wallowed in this sadness, but its tone shouldn't have been so quickly discarded and switched. I mean, the pineapple goggles page is literally only 18 canon pages after the page where Ethan's initially sad about the miscarriage. And as soon as Christian appeared, I knew this was gonna get stupid. Why are we seeing this guy, and why is there a whole fake cheating subplot where Lila thinks Ethan is cheating right after what they just went through? And if we take a moment to not focus purely on the canon pages like I have been, the comic literally has joke pages between all these moments. Here's what I originally said when reacting to this in my notes. 6724 notes. I like it, and then it's freaking ripped away from me because of the next stupid gag comic that's also outdated, so now it can't even be funny anymore. Why do you have the sharpest arc that actually affected its characters and then freaking gag comics after? You can't do both. There's a world where this arc actually could have been good, and we see that starting with the first few pages of it. But Buckley totally fumbles it, and it ends with the woman who had a freaking miscarriage saying to her man that she's sorry for acting distant because she had a miscarriage. What the fuck? It's a horrible arc, man, and that's where this video will end for now. There's still a lot of CAD left, but you'll have to wait for part 2 of this video in order to get the rest of the story. And you might not if this video just like fails totally. Like if it gets like 9 out of 10 for like a week or something, or like 3 weeks, dude, I'm not making a part 2. If you did like it though, be sure to subscribe, hype the video, like it, and I'll catch you all later. I'll catch you all later in the second part of the final video. I'm literally illiterate. I'm sorry. Have a good day, everyone.